Warren, thank you so much for joining me today. I can't wait to hear what you're up to. It's been a little while since we had our last conversation, and that was just so informative, particularly when we're talking about the commercial space. There's not a lot of, well, there's a lot of information in the mainstream media. I'm not sure how much of it is true. You're going to inform us. But where I want to start is that you reached out to me, where your staff reached out to me and said, there's a bit of a changing landscape in the office sector. I remember during COVID, we were hearing things are going to change forever. Do you remember those? Everything's going to change forever.
Yep. Yes.
Elbow handshakes, rather, we'll never
Yep.
be doing handshakes again.
Yep.
We'll be wearing masks forever, and everybody will be working from home forever. And this is going to be the new normal. What's the new normal, Warren?
Can we start with just saying that was all bullshit, Catherine, or is that not appropriate?
Oh no, you can say whatever you like. You have
okay. Well, that was all bullshit. It's like the shopping online. How bricks and mortar, they were going to come to an end. Shopping online was the be all and end all. What people forgot is when people in Victoria were locked up for 8 months, you can't go to shops. So, of course, you shop online. And, the online shopping was booming. Why? Of course it was booming. It had to. But what a lot of people then found out that they just didn't like it. Our CFO, and I've said a few times that during COVID, his son ordered a shirt from a basketball shirt from Kmart. And when his father picks it up, he gets home it's the wrong size and wrong colour. People have had enough of it. There's a lot of these online companies that just weren't making money. Younger people, they'll and mainly girls, they'll order half a dozen dresses, a few pair of shoes, pick the one they want, and send the others back, and it's free return. So there's a lot of companies that were building up, in the expectation of making big profits, and they just didn't. There certainly is a place for online shopping. Years ago, probably before you were born, Catherine, they used to have Richie Rich comics and all of these, and you could do your shopping in there, buy the Bullworker and all these other different things. So it's always been around, the online shopping. Just back then it used to be in magazines or catalogs, where now it's done on the computer. So that hasn't changed. There's certainly a bigger percentage of it, but what people are now realising is that shopping is a bit of an adventure, and they find, once again, particularly with some of the younger girls, that they'll meet a few of their mates and go out for the day and go to different shops and try things on and have a coffee and have a drink. And we're social animals. You can't do that online. And in the latest results for Myer that they brought down a couple of months ago, I think their profits were up like 14% or something across the board. But their online was down 20%. So if their profit's up 14 and online's down 20%, how much is the bricks and mortar up? Substantially. So, if I'm at the farm on the weekend and I want to get something from Supercheap, yes, I'll get online and see if they've got, if it's there at my closest store, and I'll go down and pick it up.
Yeah.
So online is fantastic, but it cannot replace bricks and mortar, where you've got the instant gratification, you have the fun of shopping with friends. And then when you get into the warmer climates, where we're very long, Mackay, Townsville, Darwin, when it's 35 degrees on a Saturday and 90% humidity, you don't go for a jog. You don't go down the beach because you've got the Irukandji jellyfish. You've got all these other things. They go shopping for the day. So shops have to change so it allows for that, and you've got to have the right eateries and coffee shops. So bricks and mortar, long way from dead. Probably got off the track a bit from the offices, but anyway, that's part of the and with the working from home, we were never a supporter of that. I just think that it's once again, we're herd animals, and how are people ever going to learn if they're not working with more senior people? If they want promotions, and it's some businesses. A friend of mine has got a very big tax business, and he has 1,100 staff. The majority of his work from home, but a lot of them are people with families, primarily women. They can drop the kids at school, go home and do their 6 hours work or whatever they want, pick the kids up in the afternoon and do some more later on. It works for them. But that's not the majority. You know, there's a place for that, but most people are getting back into the office. And you're seeing with CBA Bank, they've instructed all their senior staff to get back into the office 5 days a week, and they're trying to get the staff back. It will take a while for a lot of them because they were told you can work from home. Not a problem. No need to come in the office every day. Mm. So it will be slowly getting them to return, but they certainly are returning.
Mm. That transition is an interesting transition. Just you know, in regard to the shopping and the online shopping, I mean, I really support everything that you're saying there, because even just from my own perspective as a woman, the amount of times that you order things, you order a bunch of clothes, and then you don't really want to spend the time going and returning them and repacking them up and sending that. The only online shopping that I like to do is grocery shopping. I hate going supermarket shopping. I don't want to go to a supermarket and do something boring like that. So I absolutely support it. And of course, it is a social you know, it is a social outing when you go to the shopping center, as you say. You know, you go with friends, you meet people there, you have a coffee, you know, it's a bit of a trip. With the office, that is an interesting transition, I think, because people have got in their head that we're going to have a hybrid model for the foreseeable future. And I mean, I know obviously at Fat Tail, you know, where this video is going out to our subscribers, we go in the office 1 day a week, or the staff go in the office 1 day a week. We have times where we get together, but certainly there's not been an en masse return to the office. There's still a lot of work from home. And yeah, you're right. You know, there's different company policies. There's people that are calling them back to the office, which means that the regional centers now are losing people. You know, where the rents were going up, the rents now are coming down, perhaps in regional areas. So there's a real balance there. I mean, the hybrid model, how is it impacting, like, you know, when you're looking for office stock, or when you're looking at office, do you ever take that into account with you know, the returns and whether they're actually going to be occupied, and therefore what companies are deciding to spend, you know, in terms of their overheads on office space? I mean, how is that kind of translating with what you're seeing on the ground?
Catherine, without a doubt, we take that into account all the time. You know, because we deal in my company with wholesale investors, you know, they're pretty savvy people. They're spending their own money, and they're aware of all those things. So, you know, we only have a CBD office building in Brisbane, and that's because it's near adjacent to the Roma Street railway station, which is the only city railway station that will benefit from the new $5 billion or $6 billion. It keeps going up every week, Cross River Rail, and it's majority occupied by police. So it's a niche market. The others that we sold it because of I could see where issues were coming. Yeah, people are certainly getting more selective with offices. Yeah, we've just picked up a property a couple of weeks ago at Richmond in suburban Melbourne. Now, that has an enormous amount of car parks, 400 car parks, one car park for every 33 square metres. It's an office park. So that works very much in the hybrid model. So it's close to the major freeways. So people who don't come in every day, if you come in every day, you normally take public transport. But when they don't come in every day, quite often they will drive, or they're not there the whole day. So yes, we certainly take that into account. So that they're the sort of things we look at. And when people are working from home, they got a bit used to the more relaxed atmosphere. So that property's in an office park. It's got on every floor. It's got outdoor areas where people can sit outside and have their meetings. And we're taking some new offices up here, and part of that is a couple hundred square metres balcony outside, where you're in the office, but you can sit out on the balcony and make your phone calls and have some of your meetings. So, yes, we look at those things, and certainly the one we've picked up in Melbourne ticks all of those boxes.
Let's talk about that. Let's really talk about Melbourne and the office, because obviously Melbourne had the longest lockdown. It had people exiting, and working from home. So people got used to that model, right? In Melbourne, I think more so than any other, city in Australia. But it wasn't just that, right, that happened over that period, because the inner city was then decimated. So we saw cafes shut down because there weren't, in the central areas, staff weren't going there. They weren't using the cafes. And then we had the mayor of Melbourne that came out with this idea that there's a lot of subjects in this, but this idea that they were going to convert the office stock into residential accommodation, which sounds, really easy. Okay, we've got all these empty offices. We'll now convert them into residential accommodation. the vacancy rate in Melbourne City, actually, residential vacancy rate is around 3%, you know, even higher than 3%. So it's not like there is actually a shortage of accommodation in the city. And we've got high vacancy rates in offices still. And yet you're telling me that you have purchased an office in Melbourne. Do you want to kind of give some thought process as to why you chose to do that within Melbourne, and you know, what was behind that deal, you doing that?
Catherine, from when I started the business in 2010, we're counter-cyclical, you know, and there's another great Warren Buffett, and one of his sayings is you've got to be fearful when others are greedy and greedy when others are fearful. Now, whether you're buying property or shares, whatever it is, if you do what everyone else does, you end up where everyone else is. So, you know, over the last few years, when people were buying properties in the 3% and 4% yields, we never took part in that because it was something that was not going to last. It was going to all end in tears, and that's why it was going. So you just have to be patient, and we look for things that are mispriced. Now, Melbourne certainly hit very hard, but, you know, there's always, you know, in every ton of dirt, there's some gems. You've just got to look hard for them. And, you know, as far as converting office to residential, you know, I think I go back to my original opening statement, bullshit. You know, if you're going to convert a property to residential, you've got to have a lot of natural light. You know, so in office buildings, they like big floor plates, you know, like 2,000 square metre floor plate. But once you start chopping them up for residential, you've got to have, you can only be a certain distance from natural light. So on a 2,000 metre floor plate, you just couldn't use it all. So they're not efficient. And offices are designed for an office use. So where you have all your services doesn't suit residential. And a lot of these experts come out regularly and say we'll convert office to residential. Go and ask any of them if they've done it. There are very, very, very few buildings that you can actually convert profitably, because don't forget you're converting a second-hand building. So you're going to be converting a second-hand building, and you've got to compete with modern buildings. So you're not going to be able to sell them for as much. They actually cost not that much cheaper to do because you've got to run all new plumbing and electrical. Yeah, it's completely different. But then we get on for what do we look for. So I know that Melbourne CBD was absolutely hammered, and we certainly don't have any interest in coming back buying in the CBD. The first property I bought in Victoria was actually 385 Burke Street in 2012, which was a Virgin Active gym, and we had trouble raising equity for that. People thought it wouldn't last, but the fit out for that tenant cost $14 million. We paid $20 million for the whole investment. Now, we had that 5 or 6 years. We got an internal rate of return of over 38%. So pretty good. I think we're back at that time now, and you've just got to have a look for specific properties. And I just think this one is just terribly mispriced. You know, it was in the books for 132 million, June 30, 2022. In June 30, 2023, so only 4 months ago, it was 111.5, and we've picked it up for 80. 9.3% yield. Well, you know, 18 months ago, less than 18 months ago, it was 5% yield. Now, certainly things have changed, but they haven't changed that much. And in this particular office park, in the last 3 years, there's been over 20,000 square metres of office space lease up. So you go and so that's what we look at. How much vacancy? How quickly has it leased? Yeah, and that a lot of that space was leased during the GFC. So you've got to say, well, why are they leasing there in the GFC? Oh, sorry, in COVID, and not in the city? Well, once again, it's because of the car parks. Yeah, if you don't want to travel on the train or the trams or buses with other people, you drive yourself in. So therefore, you've got to have a lot of car parks at a price that people can afford to pay, and you've got to have the facilities. And you know, people, if they want to go home early to pick up their kids, so they're the sort of things that we look for, and that's why this property ticks the boxes. And you know, the price is off from 132 million to 80 million, and one of the buildings is 4 years old. So you know, if that's and I should say this, you know, in the early days of Sentinel, you know, if that isn't the type of property you're after at that price, then you're trying to find something that isn't there. Now, it's always easy to say why you shouldn't do, Catherine. Why you shouldn't do something. And that many properties we bought, we've had people say, oh, you know, I was the underbidder on that. I thought that was a good deal. Well, it's easier to say that when you keep your hands in your pockets. But to actually get out there and buy something and do it, you know, I think this is just, I think it's terribly mispriced. It's actually worth more. And there's no way you could replace it for this price. So, yes, we bought that for the reasons I've stated, but we're just not a buyer of CBD because there's too much competition. There's too much vacant space. It's too big a market, and there's not enough pain there. You know, you've got some of the big institutions that will hang on until you get what they call final capitulation, when your fingernails get pulled out and you just say enough is enough.
And even then, I think you'd have to question as to what's actually going to happen to CBDs, because if we're looking, I don't know, you know, with Melbourne CBDs, like you said, there's such a lot of vacant space in there. I mean, there's a lot that you've brought up, because you're absolutely right. Repurposing office buildings for residential isn't as easy as people think. And it's just so expensive for something like that to happen, particularly unless the markets are really, you know, when there's a high vacancy rate there anyway. But I just want to go back to what you're talking about with the office that you purchased and the discount on price. What's happened there is that you've been able to do that because there's not a lot of other buyers that are in the space. So you've had the mindset to step in there and to purchase something that you now think represents value. And that value is represented obviously by the yield that you're getting, which, what did you say it was, 8 or 9%?
9.32.
9.32 gross. Net, okay, which is absolutely amazing. I mean, I don't know that you'd beat that anywhere, honestly.
No, you can't.
Look at when I'm working on the ground, but I think that we need to go back and stress the importance of that, of what people, and I've heard you say this before, I think it's so important, about how people were buying office stock that had incentives tied into that stock, and why we're seeing the fallout from that now and the devaluations now. You've called it a game of smoke and mirrors. The average Joe on the street won't understand it. Can you explain what you're talking about there? What actually happens in the office market? Because people will go out and they'll buy REITs. They don't know how to analyze this.
Well, if you've got a floor where we are, and if the rent's $1,000 a square metre, in some places you can get 50%, 60% incentives, depending on what it is. So of the $1,000 a square metre, you'll get a $600 incentive. Now that's per year over the life of the lease. So a lot of times people can use that either as to get the fit out or as a reduction in rent. So while the face rent, what is on the lease, will say $1,000 a square metre, that's not what's being paid. Now, for years, the institutions have done that to say smokes and mirrors, to hold the value of the properties up, and by doing that, they've been able to keep the valuations up and keep building more and more properties. You know, it's a false market. Now we're seeing that come to an end, but a lot of tenants, they need some incentive in order to do the fit out. You know, if you're talking a few $1,000s a square metre for a fit out, 1,000 square metre office, you're talking $3 million. So it's a lot of money. So in the right market, yes, you might do an incentive day one to get the tenant in there, but then you don't. You know, our properties we have up in the northern markets like Darwin, for people to renew a lease, there's zero incentive, absolutely nothing, because there's no vacant space around. You know, that they have nowhere to go. And if they were to go to another building and get a small incentive, that wouldn't do the fit out. Where in the markets like Melbourne, where there is a lot of vacancy, people have choices, and they'll look for the highest incentive. So that is starting to come back. We're seeing with construction prices, it's almost impossible to make things stack. And I can't speak for construction prices in Melbourne. We haven't done anything down there, but I know up here in Brisbane, even if you get your land for nothing, you just can't make things work. Construction price absolutely through the roof, and I don't see them coming back. I understand that the price is starting to level out, but I just don't see them coming back because of the boom on infrastructure and everything else. So if you can get good quality assets where they're well designed well leased, and there's not a lot of vacancy, I think there's going to be enormous rental growth over the next few years. There has to be, because, to replace the stock, like the one we're buying at Richmond, at least 30% more. So to build it, you've got to get rent 30% higher. Well, tenants just aren't ready for that, understandably. So there's fantastic opportunities coming up, and next year will just be absolutely terrific for us. But as you say, there's a lot of people just can't get their finance. They can't get their money together. They're buying in the in COVID, and now they've seen, you've only got to have a look at the listed REITs, where some of them are off. One of the Queensland-based ones, they're off from $1.26 to 39 cents. So they're in all sorts of strife, and there's quite a lot like that. Even the very big, well-run boys, they're off 30-40%. So they can't raise equity on the market. Their LVRs are now high. Their LVRs might have been at 30% when they were $5, but now they're back to $3. The LVR's now 60% or something. And because they were buying in the 4% yields, they don't have the cash flow to repay debt. Even if your debt is low at interest rates of 6.5%, then all sorts of strife. So, we bought just on 800 million last year, but, large dominant shopping centres. One we bought in Mackay, we paid 280 million, and you could not replace it for 700. Couldn't replace it. So there's some great opportunities around, Catherine, but you've really got to understand the market that you're in. Can the tenants pay the rent? You don't want to be buying in a market that's going backwards. So the fantastic opportunities.
Construction costs, I mean, that's just it's mind-blowing how much the construction costs have gone up. And it's not just that. I mean, even in the residential sector, we're seeing a lot of companies going into administration. I think there was a story this morning in the paper about Perth, one of the big builders there, that are going under. At the same time, we've got record immigration coming into the country, record low vacancy rates. You're talking, there's a lot of government projects, of course, which are taking away workers from other areas of construction. Wage is still going up in that. I mean, have you got any examples about exactly how much the construction costs have gone up? Because surely that's going to be really bullish for prices as well, in the commercial sector. I mean, certainly it is in the residential, like established residential prices, because as you say, the replacement cost, it's cheaper to buy and establish than it is to build, and the developers can't make a profit, and the land prices aren't low enough for them to make a profit. I mean, in the commercial space, that's got to be bullish, hasn't it, for commercial prices?
Yes, certainly. An example that I can give is we've got about 600 million invested in Mackay region, which is, we love that market up there. And there's one street there, we own all of one side of the street. And we've built a number of industrial sheds, warehouses up there. They're 2,000 square metres, what they call concrete tilt panel walls, 250 metres of office. Nice little warehouses, but basic. The first one we did 4 years ago cost 2.4 million. We've done a couple others, went 2.4, 3.2, 3.8. The latest price is 6 million. Now that's a very simple, basic shed. There's not a lot in it. It's not like building an office or a block of units. You've got 4 walls, concrete slab, insulated roof, some office, and you've got construction prices have gone up 2.5 times. Or tenants can't pay 2.5 times the rent. They're certainly having to pay a lot more. But if you have, as we do, a number of quality sheds that cost 2.4 million to build, well, there's enormous rental growth. Enormous rental, as I say, with our shopping centre. To replace that is 700 million, and then you've still got to build out in the suburbs. You can't get one in the city, but you've just got to make sure you really have to know your assets and buy in the right markets. But there are, we've got just under $2 billion worth of property, and we get people wanting to buy some of ours, some of the assets we got, big piece of land, and we're just not a seller, Catherine. You just, we didn't pay too much for our assets, and we've actually seen our industrial fund go up in value in the latest year, where there's not many that have done that, because we never wound the valuations back. When everyone else was in their 5%, we were still in the high 6s and 7s. So yes, your bricks and mortar, your concrete, I've seen units in Brisbane City over recent months sell for $4,000 to $5,000 a square metre. Now, if you had to go and build that now, a developer would have to be getting $20,000 a square metre. Just ridiculous. There's some great buying opportunity if you know the market.
Yeah. I'm interested in just kind of like to veer off from that a little bit, is overseas. And again, like I mostly deal with the residential market, but I know overseas, we're seeing countries that are kind of embracing 3D printing, and they're 3D printing sort of big infrastructure projects, say bridges and so on and so forth. And in America, they've got 3D printed housing estates. In Germany, they've got a 3D printed apartment building, which obviously, once you've got the initial equipment, which is expensive, but would cut down on material, because you can use alternative materials and labor costs. Do you see that kind of like being, Australia was so behind. The only thing that I've read on 3D printing over here is that a toilet block that was built in Darwin is being built with a 3D printer, so it's going to get built quickly. But do you kind of see anything like that coming in and disrupting the industry? Have you looked forward to and thought about stuff like that?
Yes, we've looked at the 3D printing, and it's when someone's promoting something, they'll tell you how good it is. They don't tell you how bad it is. And we've had a look at it, and it just, for a number of reasons, the cost and everything, it just isn't efficient at this stage. But certainly we do have to change things. We do a lot up in Darwin. I hadn't heard about the 3D printed toilet up there, so I will investigate it. But we're actually bringing in modular housing from Asia. Now, what people have modular, some people think that it's a caravan without wheels. But the product we're bringing in is structural steel, earthquake rated up to 8 on the Richter scale, and the earthquake that demolished Morocco a couple of months ago, 6 weeks ago, that was only 6 on the Richter scale. So these are designed to 8. So they're fully insulated on 6 sides, double glazed windows. We have to do something different like that, Catherine, because with the government just throwing money at housing, that's only pushing prices up. Because if the Prime Minister was to give you $200 million to go and build some houses, well, what you would do is you can then come and steal some of my staff, pay them more money. You can pay more for materials, so there's no shortage, and that just pushes the prices up. But I can't build them. So between the two of us, we haven't built any more houses. You've built more, and the government will say, what a great job. Catherine has built 300 houses this year. Last year she only did 50. But they don't say about Warren Ebert hasn't built any. So them putting money into it does not increase the capacity one bit.
Yeah.
So bringing in, and the last thing we want to do is see unemployment in Australia. And I think the unions don't like this imported housing, but we just don't have the labour, Catherine. And anyone who wants a job in Australia now, particularly in the construction industry, has got a job. So we need to do something to break it. And importing, ready-built housing into Australia, I think for a few years to try and get on top of the crisis we have, there isn't any other way. I know the Queensland government have started building modular housing up here because they say, that's a saviour, modular housing. But what they do is bring 200 subcontractors in from the suburbs into a shed. So once again, no more capacity. So yes, they're building modular, but we've seen them and they're poor quality. They're not really built to transport. Yes, you build them in the factory and they look fine, but you start whacking them on a truck and take them a couple of thousand kilometres. That they're not designed for that. You've got to. Takes a long time to get the designs right, and I can tell you what they've got up here isn't right, and it won't work, and it'll lose money. But it's the government, so they're not accountable. Yeah. Well, they don't think they are.
Yeah, we're slowing everything in Australia. I mean, it's just it's a joke. I do a lot of buying for people on the NDIS scheme. They want to buy NDIS places because you can get them in suburbs that have got decent capital growth. You get a house, it's yielding quite a lot because it's got 9 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, but everyone's taking a slice of the pie. The money that goes into it is just enormous compared to what would have to be if it was an efficiently run program. Finally, I just want to sort of go over in regard to areas and where you're seeing value. spoken a lot about, you're obviously pouring money into Darwin and, the north of Australia. You're seeing value there. Is there anywhere else in Australia that you're eyeing up now, as it might have got to the bottom of the cycle, and you're going to start moving into those markets, or are you still staying, in those areas?
We certainly look everywhere, Catherine. I suppose I'm a bit reluctant to buy in Perth, with the only reason being it's just so far away for us. We have 1.5 billion invested Mackay North, Cairns, Townsville, Darwin. So, we're up in those markets every month. So if we buy another property up there, it's very easy to inspect. We buy something in Perth and it's a 7 hours flight over, 7 hours back, and it's just difficult. The massive growth markets are in the northern regions, from Rockhampton north. But I think there's, we've just bought one in Melbourne, as I've said, and I think there'll be some great opportunities in New South Wales and Victoria in the next year. Not that I think that they're particularly I don't think they have the economic growth that we do in North Queensland, but property's just mispriced. Where people have paid too much, and they've got to get out of them. What we're seeing with some companies, some REITs, is they're building another office building, or they're building a factory, and construction prices have gone through the roof. The price that they had in their feasibility is no longer achievable, but they've got to get more money to finish the project. Now, they can't borrow off the bank because their LVRs are too high. They can't go and raise equity off their investors because the share price is through the floor. So they've got to sell existing assets. And what happens in difficult times is you've got to sell good assets, because people won't buy the bad assets. Now, that's what happened with this one we bought in Melbourne. It wasn't one that they wanted to sell, but you've got to sell what the market will buy. And at the moment, there's not a lot of buyers. So the buyers like us are very choosy. We only want good value assets. So I think there certainly will be some very good buying in Melbourne, or Victoria and New South Wales in the coming year. You've just got to keep your eye. And as I say, with young people, I advise when you're buying a house, you've got to be out there looking every week. It's no good looking at a house and then in a month's time say, gee, that one at Richmond was cheap. Yeah. You go back and it's gone. So you must be in the market all the time. So the day you see something that is value, you buy it. Because if it is a really good deal, someone else will buy it. Yeah. So I think some great opportunities, but a couple of things that I wanted to mention, Catherine, is without getting political, I wasn't a buyer in Victoria because of the previous Premier had. I think some of the things he did with taxation, I'm surprised there's any business left down there, but maybe they're so entrenched they just couldn't leave. So when we were negotiating on this property at Richmond, I said my only concern is the current Premier. He's going to drive this place through the ground. And years ago there was one, Joan Kerner destroyed the place, and then Jeff Kennett got in. So the day after we agreed terms to buy this, Daniel Andrews must have heard we're coming back down there, and he resigned. So I think that's it need to be reset down there. He, in spite of what people may say, I think it was a real negative on Victoria, and you need a reset. Now, I don't know the new fellow, but certainly he couldn't be. As far on the taxation side, I'm not talking about other issues, but just the new tax and that imposed on businesses, just horrendous. There's only so much blood you can get out of a stone. So I think that's a real opportunity for Victoria to go ahead, and which gets into the buyers. Also, any of yourself or your followers, we're actually in Melbourne towards the end of the month with some investors to talk about this property, and certainly happy to talk about any of the other issues. But some great times coming up. It has never been easier to make money, Catherine. This is as easy as it gets.
I love everything that you say, Warren, and I think that there'd be a lot of sympathy with you with Dan Andrews. There were quite a few of us that suffered under some policies that he implemented. But that's great that you're down in Melbourne. If you can send me some information on that, I'd love to get that information out to subscribers. You've got a big following among my subscribers that absolutely love you, love the information that comes across. It's information, and I stress it again, it's information that they're not going to get anywhere else. You're someone who's on the ground, you work in the market, you know exactly what's going on outside of the stuff that's coming through on the mainstream, and the information is just invaluable. And I want to give you a big thanks for coming on and talking to me again. And, you know, hopefully there'll be many more chats in the future where we can get the information out and get you out in front of people, and so they can be a bit better informed of what's going on in the market.
Thanks, Catherine. Just before I go, one thing I wanted to say, you know, we get up north regularly, and every time I'd go to Townsville, I'd meet with the property editor for the Townsville Bulletin. And one day he said, "Warren, why are you so bullish on Townsville, but the locals don't like it?" Because I used to say, "Listen, it's going to boom up here. It's going to boom up here." Mm. You know, when you're in the bottom of a well, Catherine, all you can see is the dark walls. Where the person standing up top looking down, you know, can see the diamonds glittering in the wall. Yeah, because you're in that battle every day, and I think people in Victoria, they go and have a coffee, and people are complaining about the issues. And I'm not saying Victoria's a bad place to live, but you know, there's been some tough times over the last few years. So people go and talk to their friends who have the same view, and they talk about all the problems. But when you're outside, not living it every day, you can sort of see the opportunities. Yeah, and there's always opportunities in every market. You've just got to be able to identify them. So I'm not saying that I'm smarter than the people down there, but because we're not involved in that negativity all the time, I think we can identify some opportunities where the people living there daily aren't. So, as I say, happy to catch up with anyone while we're down there, and it was great to chat again, Catherine. And you know, the one thing that I really disappoints me is seeing, you know, the average investor losing money investing in bad products because they're sold a pup by you know, what we call the spivs. You know, the people are out there spruiking 2 years ago. Where are they today? Yeah, you know, they're not out there buying. You know, they're selling and they're hiding. We love it when the markets get tough. It's just fantastic. And we've got, you know, people tell you how bad the banks are. You know, we've got all the 4 major banks want to fund this project in Richmond. Well, 5. We've got St George as well. So it's not, you know, they like supporting us because they know we buy in the difficult times when things are mispriced. We don't buy at the top of the market. So it's a great time, and look forward to catching up with you towards the end of the month, Catherine.
Yeah, absolutely. And your passion is my passion as well, because obviously I work as a real estate agent, I work in the market, and my motivation is also to make sure that people don't get pulled, you know, in by the spruik, buy properties, aren't quality properties, you know, get in the market at the wrong time, that they understand how to time the market and exactly what to buy, and those, you know, and where to buy, and all those 3 points are really vital for people that want to make money. So thanks again so much. Really appreciate your time. Can't wait to catch up. That will be fantastic.
Catherine. Thanks very much.
We'll talk soon.
See you later. Bye.
Bye.